Thank you, Martin. And for your benefit, Doc, we usually start with brief introductions, just so you get a sense of who folks are. I don't know if you already know quite a few of these folks or not, but I know I haven't met you yet. So I'm Doug. I chair this Coffee with a Purpose group. It was started by Pat Conaway, which I'm sure you know several years ago. And we enjoy having speakers of all subjects on to talk to us, and are looking forward to hearing you what you and Polly have to say.
Yes.
Let's move around the room. Let's see, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hanna, town meeting member, longtime resident, interested in all things Natick and beyond.
Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, we're just letting you leave the Metro Works.
Okay, we'll come back to it as you guys are straightening it out. Ricky, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I got to do that too.
Ricky Ball, expatriate from Natick after 63 years in Natick, former selectman, housing authority member, Pecan founder, and still interested and concerned about Natick and environs.
Thank you, Ricky. Elaine.
Elaine Ostroff, relatively new to Natick, but very long time involvement with disability rights, co-founded the Adaptive Environment Center. I'm Josh's mother, Rebecca's grandmother. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Rick?
I'm Rick Devereaux. Nice to meet you both. Nice to meet you, Doc. Sorry, I know Paul. Five-year resident, I guess, of Natick, and have gotten active in town government and environmental affairs and trails with Pat Conaway. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Rick. Carol.
Good morning, Doc. My name is Carol Berkowitz. I'm a 50-year plus resident of Natick, love Natick, and live on Lake Cochituate. So I have an interest in the lake, and I'm a town meeting member.
Thank you, Carol. Tom?
Yeah, Tom Daly. I'm a about 32-year resident of Natick, a town meeting member, and a climate and racial activist. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Ramage. Interested in environment. I volunteer with Pat Conaway and Keep Natick Beautiful, and interested in all things Natick. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Bill. Carrie.
To continue with the theme here, town meeting member, concerned environmentalist, treasure for pets, Keep Natick Beautiful. I may go off grid, Doc, to do, I've got a Coffee with Purpose coming up in 2 weeks. No panic, Carol. I need to do some editing of some slides, so I may be listening attentively, but not here. Look forward to what you have to say.
Thanks, Carrie. Brindley?
Good morning, Brindley Vickers. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Environmental activist, town meeting member, been here for a while. 2 young kids, and I'm grateful for your service and everything you guys do, and I'm looking forward to listening today. I will also be on and off a lot, but I'm looking forward to hearing it. Thanks.
Great. And let's circle back to the folks at MetroWorks.
I'm not sure the owl is actually rotating.
It just did now a little bit. Yeah.
We got it. Okay. We got 4 people. And I'm Martin Kessel. I'm kind of the technical host, and also, like many other people there, town meeting and other committees in town, particularly open space. And I guess.
Who else?
Hi, good morning. I'm Sally Hopkins. I'm always enjoying trying to get down here to the MetroWorks to be in person, because I like it when we're all together in person. But it's really wonderful to have you this morning, Doc, and you and Paul are some town stalwarts. I'm fairly new to Natick also, but I come with interest and appreciation. Thank you.
And who else is down there? I see Catherine.
I'm here. This is Kathleen Donovan. Good morning, Doc. I'm a Natick resident of 33 years. I'm on the library's board of trustees, and I'm a recent recruit to Pat Conway's Keep Natick Beautiful work. So thank you for coming this morning.
And I'm Paul Joseph. I am on the select board currently. Also pulled into a lot of different volunteer roles and love this community and really appreciate the work you're doing. Paul, thank you for connecting us. Doc, thank you. And thank you both for your service. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks. And we appreciate you, Paul, offering your space up for the in-person component of our meeting. I see Scott Davis has joined us as well. Scott, you want to say hi?
Yeah, good morning, all. I haven't been here for a long time. Just thought I'd do something new Monday morning. Nice to see you all.
Good to have you, Scott.
Thanks.
And Sarah and I forgot the one most important aspect of our introduction. We're the proud parents of our oldest son, Will, who served in the 82nd Airborne for several years. After high school, he did 2 overseas tours and is now not in the military anymore. But we certainly appreciated his service and worried like heck about him when he was not here. So I will turn it over to the two of you. We're really happy to have you with us.
Great, thank you for the introductions. Morning, Doc. We call our program the Doc and Polly Show, and I am the VSO for the town of Natick. I'll give a quick rundown of what I am able to do as VSO in the town of Natick. And that, number one, is direct connections with the VA in Washington. I was lucky to be selected as one of a few people in Massachusetts to get this direct access to the VA records, and I have my old VA desktop computer here. And first thing I did this morning was go on the system, because I had one of those dreaded calls on Saturday that a 33-year-old Marine veteran that I had worked with had passed on, and so I was on that first thing in the morning. But good thing I have that system, because now his discharge papers are in the hands of the funeral home. So that's important thing to have for me. I was appointed as Doc knows, to the Governor's Council subcommittee just before COVID started, and the committee deals with sexual assaults, domestic violence, and I bring to the table military sexual traumas. And we're just firing up again now for our July meeting. We'll all get together again. I was the only veteran on the committee. They just appointed 2 women veterans to the committee, so it's going to be great. And I've been on that, like I say, since just before COVID started. And it's right now it's like this format, in person, if you can make it to Braintree, or virtually. I'm on the me and Doc are both representatives to the specialty courts in Middlesex County. Middlesex County Veterans Treatment Court, Judge Fabry presiding. Me and Doc have been on that since I know I was wondering when they started, and I think Doc came on right after me. And Doc's been and me have been active. Doc more so than me, and a recovery court in Middlesex County also. That's Judge Jennifer Stark. Both alternatives to incarceration. It's important to me and Doc. It's our first jobs out of our education was the Department of Corrections for both of us, different roles. Me and Doc started a cognitive behavioral therapy recovery, smart recovery program. That's where the Doc and Paulie show comes in. We do this program, and it's open to anybody that feels a need. It mostly deals with what's called dual diagnosis, and that's substance abuse, mental health, behavioral health issues. The combination of the two can be very, very, very dangerous. I started a program in Natick in 2017, and I don't know what took so long to get a program like this going, but it's suicide education, awareness, prevention, panel concepts. Doc is also involved that with me, and it was the very, very first time the panel concept was ever used in the country. And I'm proud of it. Unfortunate reasons I had to I started this program was a couple of close to home losses of suicides from my clients. And most of you have read over the last, I'll say, decade of the 22-a-day veteran suicides. You've seen the posters and the TV ads. They've stopped, I think, since COVID, but it's still happening to a higher extent. But starting this panel concept, and the way the panel concept works is I started it with a mother, Lynn Patton from Bristol, Rhode Island, who lost her son to suicide at Fort Hood, Texas, Matthew Patton. And me and Lynn met by accident. She was giving a talk about Matthew and prevention to young soldiers on the base, and I was doing a follow-up on suicide prevention to the same group of soldiers, and that was the first time we met. But after meeting, and that on the base, we decided, the two of us, we got to do more. We got to do more, and we decided on a panel concept. Because one thing I've learned over the years, and Doc will attest to this, anybody that knows it, nobody wants to listen to Paul Carew for an hour. So by mixing it up with a panel of experts, parents, it's a much more effective program. I've done it in Natick several times. I've done it all the way to Bristol, Rhode Island. So I've done other communities in Metro West and further. But it's a great concept. I have myself chairman. I have several veterans. Colonel Bill Callahan, who's originally from Natick. Doc Salk, of course, representing the psych part of the program, and all sorts of different panelists, psychologists. I've had clinical psychologists. I've had psychiatrists. I've had different family members who have lost somebody. I've had suicide survivors, veteran suicide survivors, including myself, and it keeps your attention. It's a 2-hour panel, 2.5 hour panel concept, but it's I feel it's working, right, Doc?
Absolutely.
I feel it's working. We don't have exact numbers, of course, but I feel it's working. The fact that I haven't haven't had that dreaded phone call in a while, so I think it's helping. It hasn't started by any means, but it is helping. So I'm going to move on to the something interesting, which is the Doc and Polly show. And Doc and Polly show comes to you on Zoom for now. It started in person. Me and Doc started the program right here in the community service building. And when the weather got nice, we moved to Carol, you'll love it, on the shores of Lake Atchituate. And it was great. It was great. Nothing better than that environment, Carol. You're so fortunate to live on Lake Atchituate. Growing up in Natick, I love Lake Atchituate. Doc has been in Framingham for a while, but he likes coming to Natick for the lake meetings. So we started this in I've been doing the recovery part of it, and therapy part of it for 20 years now. I went to work, was hired by the Middlesex Sheriff's Department 20 years ago to start a treatment reentry program for veterans and young addicts, and I started that. And one of the first things that I came across was this two psychologists who ran a smart recovery meeting. And smart recovery, me and Doc both agree is a great way to rid ourselves of our addictions, whether they be substance abuse addictions, mental health addictions, whatever your addiction can be. The smart recovery is a great treatment program. And me and Doc, because of our backgrounds, we took it to the next level. We took it to the cognitive behavioral therapy, smart recovery methods. And it's number one, it's much more interesting. And number two, there's much more tools in our toolbox to work with. And I'm going to let Doc give the overview of the CBT, smart recovery. Doc?
I would say one of the most significant things I can tell you is that we started this several years ago, as Paul had said. We ended up moving to Zoom because of COVID. But one of the side effects of all of that, if you'll forgive that expression, was that we had people attending our group from places as far away as Northampton, and they would not be able to attend the group otherwise. And so we had the one group, which is a requirement for any justice-involved veteran in the Veteran Treatment Court. So those people are required to go. There are two recovery courts we're connected with. One is in Framingham, one's in Newton. And there are a number of referrals we have gotten from them as well. Oftentimes, it's just a suggestion that they try it by the court. Sometimes they're required. But what's happened is we've had to expand to a second group. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that. So we have two groups on Saturdays, and we're getting requests to start a third group because there are that many people who are interested and want to get involved. Not everybody is from a recovery court. We have probation officers are associated with the courts. They have other clientele as well, and they refer people to us who are regular probationers, not in specialty courts. So I would say that's one of the best measures. You can get people come to the meetings, they come back, they stick to it, they like it, etc. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. Out of college, as Paul had said, I ended up working at MCI Concord with the counseling service, which was part of the Division of Legal Medicine, which came under the Department of Mental Health. DLM, as we refer to it, I think is no longer around. I ended up my career in corrections as being the clinical administrator of MCI Concord, which was known as the Deputy Superintendent of Treatment, first ever appointment to that. I then left, finished my doctoral program at BU, ended up doing mostly things related to addictions, ended up in private practice for a number of years, ended up retiring, spending most of my time taking care of doing my favorite thing, taking care of my grandkids. And then, of course, I met Paul Carew, which ended my nice, quiet retirement. That and the fact that my grandkids got older and it requires much attention. And Paul and I met, as Paul had said, in the Veterans Treatment Court. And we chatted a bit about our histories in terms of corrections and whatnot. And Paul said to me one day, I'm going to speak at MCI Norfolk to a lifers group. And I think there were youthful offender program was there, some all sorts of different programs of prisoners who were looking to hear us speak on dual diagnosis. We had never done anything like that before. And Paul was gracious enough to be the driver that day, and we're driving down, and there was a little bit of silence on the road as we're thinking, oh my God, first of all, I had not been into MCI Norfolk in at least 20 years. We had never worked together at the podium, so to speak. And by the end of that night, we were both surprised and happy that we just sort of slid in and out of our conversation naturally, as if we had been doing it for years. And it was our very first time together. So from that point on, we decided that we would like to do some other things. We are the co-coordinators of the mentor program in the Veterans Treatment Court. And of course, we co-lead the smart recovery groups. Paul had experience with smart recovery. I had not. As I said, most of the work I had done in my practice related to recovery issues, addictions, etc. And most of the experience was with AA, rational recovery, other kinds of programs. The cognitive-based programs seemed to me at one point to be, I don't feel like making a big commitment, like going to AA a few times a week. So I'll go to rational recovery, one of those programs, and just talk myself out of picking up the drink. And I thought, how ridiculous can you get? Until Paul and I started talking about smart recovery, we went into a training program, which was online, got approved to be facilitators, and started the work there. Smart recovery, typically the groups are run by people whose training includes and sometimes only involves the online training for facilitators in smart recovery, and that's not really a lot. Neither of us felt it was enough. And since we both had training and experience working with cognitive behavior therapy, we set up these groups. So again, we'd get together maybe 10 minutes before the group would begin, and we'd say, let's do blah, blah, blah today. We'd go and do it. And before we knew it, we had a way in which the groups run. So we can tell you, as a matter of fact, I've been doing some writing on this, exactly what the format will be for any meeting. And sometimes at the end of the meeting, that format actually has held. Because what tends to happen is we will begin, usually with Paul, checking in with everyone. And from that, we will move on to something else. But oftentimes an issue comes up For instance, one of the people in the group this weekend pointed out that his father had died like a week earlier, and it's like, what? That may not have come up, and it led to whole other discussion that was not part of our planning. We are blessed, I would say, to be able to shoot from the hip, as they say. Something comes up, we're able to deal with it professionally and completely. We then will move into, typically I'll do a little theoretical presentation, not too dry. And that also will lead to discussions. We have a series of books that Paul has purchased that we talk about and offer to any of our participants to read. We will then, after that, go into a smart recovery kind of presentation. And again, not too dry, and it leads to discussion. I would say both the groups we're doing now contain mostly discussion. When I say discussion, it's not just Paul and I discussing things, but going back and forth with the members of the group. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of connectivity, there's a lot of processing information. People feel very comfortable coming in and saying, I had this happen to me this week or today, or going into court on Monday, and I'll be facing this, that, or the other thing. And we're able to do a lot of processing around those issues. I think when we started this, we figured we'd, do it for, I don't know, maybe a year or two and see what happens. And it's 6 years later now. I remember the first day I walked into Veterans Treatment Court, and I thought, well, this is interesting. Brings me back to many years earlier when I had been involved in courts and corrections and whatnot. And I thought, well, I certainly can do this for 6 months of a year or a year. It's, a great way to volunteer time. It's a good cause, blah, blah, blah. 7 or 8 years later, I'm still doing it. But anyway, and it's a valuable experience that we both enjoy.
And Doc's really enjoying his retirement.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like you're keeping him busy, Polly. So, can either of you maybe just shed a little bit more light on some of the terms you've been using? Like, what is the Veterans Treatment Court, and what's the essence of what CBT therapy is? I guess.
Yeah, I'll take
I should say that when I started working in corrections, within 6 months, I never used words. It was all abbreviations. It's the way people talk, so I apologize.
Oh, no, it's fine. I just want to learn more, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a tendency to do that, and that's, I use CBT, assuming everybody in the world watched these commercials. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, has been commercialized in so many different aspects, and that's recent, the last couple of years. And I tell Doc, I says, they get this idea from the Doc and Polly show on Saturday mornings.
Absolutely, no question about that.
Right, Doc? So
absolutely.
I want to give a brief overview of how Veterans Treatment Court and Recovery Courts have started in Massachusetts. We're not the first. Norfolk County was the first. Judge Hogan Sullivan started the first Veterans Treatment Court in Massachusetts. The first Veterans Treatment Courts nationwide was started in Buffalo, New York. And it just so happens that my younger sister was on that committee. My younger sister was a attorney / eventually judge in New York City, and she was part of the planning at the start of it. And I'm talking 20 years ago. And she calls me and says, "Have you heard about this Veterans Treatment Court we're working on in New York?" I said, "No." I'll keep you updated. And well, she did, but next thing you know, I got involved with, I had a client that was in trouble in Norfolk County, a Marine veteran from Natick, and ended up going to Norfolk court, Norfolk County Court, and advocating for this young Marine veteran. And after doing that, when all of a sudden out of the blue, I get a call from Judge Michael Fabry, and hey, Paul, I was starting a veterans treatment court in Middlesex County. I says, I know Judge Fabry. Judge Coons has already called me and invited me to be part of it. He says, are you going to take it? I says, well, two judges asking me. Yeah, I guess I should. I can get in trouble with the best of them. So I said, so I jumped on board. And what it is it's treatment. Some of these veterans may get to jail. Some of these veterans have been in state prison, county jail, and so forth, and they give it another chance. We have one that actually became a mentor after it's a 2-year program. Normally, this veteran took the 5-year plan to graduate, and when he graduated, became one of me and Doc's mentors. So it does work, but it's in a nutshell, it's treatment versus incarceration, and the judge, the court sets up different forms of treatment. They can be inpatient treatment programs, they can be outpatient treatment programs. They involve counseling. They involve mandatory meetings like mine and Doc's program. Everybody has to attend our program. So I love the idea. When I was working for the DOC along with Doc back in the day, I remember we were getting inundated with Vietnam veterans, late 70s, early 80s. We were getting slammed with Vietnam veterans, which was my age, which was my brothers, you know, and it bothered me, and I know it bothered Doc, you know. So finally in 1983, PTSD became a service-connected disability, and now the courts of Massachusetts, which both me and Doc have spoken to about PTSD, started to realize, all right, PTSD, you know, for lack of other sentences, made me do it. Okay, so the PTSD contributed. It didn't make us do anything. It contributed to our issues. It contributed to our behaviors. It contributed to our drug abuse, mental health, behavioral health. It contributed. And so the legislator of Massachusetts did a series of commutations of veterans that have been in for 10, 12 years, and realized, but this is along the same concept of veteran treatment court. They did these commutations with a stipulation, like everybody here have heard of parole and probation. Well, like parole, all right, I'm going to let you out, Brian. All right, I'm going to let you out. You're here for murder. On these stipulations, you will go to anger management for 10 years. You will go to AA for the rest of your life. You will go to NA for the rest of your life. You will do certain things for the rest of your life, because we're not saying that you did not commit the crime that you were sentenced to. We're saying that there were mitigating factors like Vietnam that led you to do this. Right, Doc?
Absolutely.
Give
So I'll talk a little bit about CBT, Paul.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So the prior to the 1960s, most of psychiatry was psychodynamically oriented, meaning it was about the unconscious and the unconscious motivations that people had. You then had B.F. Skinner, who talked about behavioral theories and therapy. And then Aaron Beck came along in the 60s with cognitive behavior therapy. His particular therapy was called rational emotive therapy, which is basically the way you think affects the way you feel, which affects the way you act. And so the whole therapy in theory is based on that. And it goes off in many different directions depending on who the proponent is of the therapy. So what we found is that people are able to relate much more to cognitive behavioral therapy, and you're able to do things quicker than 5-day-a-week therapy. And smart recovery is based on cognitive behavior therapy, but smart recovery is not cognitive behavior therapy, if that makes sense. So they use some proponents of cognitive behavior therapy, and that's how Paul and I just take it a little bit further in the groups with the use of. So it's basically, the way you think, change the way you think. And so we talk about things like habits. We'll use different terminology rather than we will use the term addiction, but we also use habits as a way to describe behavior. And we cite quite a bit of work that's been done on habits, how to change habits, how to add to your repertoire, and how that can help with what we refer to as addictions. I mean, Paul and I have worked with people in AA for many years, and we are believers in AA, and we're believers in therapy and other kind of treatment than smart recovery. But what we've found over the years is you have people who will go 10 years without picking up a drink, and then for some reason they pick up and they start again. So we not only take into consideration the view of AA, but also smart recovery and cognitive behavior therapy in general. What did I leave out, Paul?
No, that's kind of hitting the nail on the head. Doc had mentioned books, and he mentioned habits. There's two books out that me and Doc have read, and we incorporated into our groups. I just ordered 10 of each, and as Doc said, we'll get like a book club going here. Tipping Point, the name. I mean, The Powers of Habit, Visual Scarring, Dr. Billing. There's so many different books, and me and Doc will share them if I find it. Like Dr. Billings was a former military clinical psychologist, and he wrote about the invisible scarrings, which happen to be the invisible scars of war, and the drugs that go along with these invisible scarring, and really, really, really interesting book. And we've all heard about overprescribing medications for mental health issues and so forth. Well, the VA has really cut back on the prescription medications for behavioral issues, which I think is huge as far as I'm concerned. There's so many veterans out there with the hidden wounds of war, the PTSDs, the bipolars, the traumatic brain injuries. Those are the hidden wounds of war, and I actually do talks on those to different groups, clinical and otherwise, and it's really interesting when you talk about the hidden wounds of war. I walk down the street, I walk past Doug and Sarah. I've never met her before. Hey, how you doing? Do I look like I have PTSD?
No.
No.
Hmm.
Right? Do I have PTSD? yes, but you know, it's not something that you can see, and somebody walking past you. But that's why they call it the hidden wounds of war. And me and Doc work together on these different programs, and we work together. Like Doc said, me and Doc drove to Norfolk, and I'm Norfolk prison. Almost in silence that first time we went into prison. Both of us had been to MCI Norfolk in prior lives. Me as a sergeant, lieutenant, and Doc is a therapist. And never thinking we'd be going back there 25 years later to address groups of lifers, young offenders, veteran lifers, minority camp. We just had half an auditorium full of inmates, and we weren't sure how we were going to hit it off, you know. But we just like a team hit it off, followed each other. I have enough. They have enough of me. I sit down. Doc could get up and he bath, and it worked out great. And it works out great with the veterans that me and Doc deal with. You know, most all veterans that I've met and Doc have met can talk to us. Rick, do you have a question? I'm sorry, Doug.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you for recognizing him.
Thanks. Off mute. Yeah, thanks, Polly. Maybe more a question for Doc, but I'm sure you both can answer it. You talked a bit about where CBT came from, but the thought to feeling to action is not, I assume, a one-way street. And when people have PTSD, you know, isn't there a component of labeling feelings and beginning to, you know, coming the other way from that?
Yeah, definitely. And we use references like rational emotive behavior therapy as just a starting point. And one of our early meetings, one of our members of the group, who was also from Veterans Treatment Court, had spent his whole life as a pusher, drug user, etc. And he said to us, "So it's all I know. You know, it's in my brain, and it is that. How am I going to change that?" And so that led me into a discussion of brain plasticity. Now, doesn't that sound interesting? But the way in which I was able to discuss it, you know, I'd use that label, but then use, you know, everyday language to describe what I'm talking about in specific kind of examples. And it led to really interesting discussion, which ultimately ended with that particular member looking at me and smiling and giggling a little bit as if to say, "Hey man, this is what it is," you know. But yeah, so we will do some labeling. The group itself is not a I guess it is. I was going to say not a therapy group. I guess it is a therapy group, but we don't run it in that way. We run it from the point of view of communication and how to get communication going. So whatever language you bring, we will use that language. And so the fact that we have extensive experience in not only in cognitive behavior therapy, but in prisons, in court systems and whatnot, bring whatever language you want, whatever labels, whatever situations, whatever you want to bring, and we're ready. When we talk about the literature in layman's terms, if you will, and we oftentimes will get participants to say, "Well, I'd love to read that book," and ultimately they end up reading about 10 pages and thinking, "Well, this doesn't sound like what you guys were saying." And then at other times they'll pick up the books and just get into it. And so we're just eclectic, I guess, in that way. We're just open and ready. We have our beliefs in treatment and approach, but we welcome whatever language you want to bring, as long as we can, have some level of understanding. If you come in speaking French as your language, I will love every second of it. I won't understand a word of it, but I'll just love the sound. But so and between us, we can pick up the vibe and go with it.
Sounds like a great approach.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rick.
No, that's all. Thanks.
Yeah.
I want to. I just want to interject something. I had talked about my start in the veterans treatment courts, and that started when I came to Natick in 2010. September of 2010, a stepfather and mother came to me to help their son out. He was 20 years old, recently discharged from the Marine Corps. And he's the one that I went to Norfolk Court, Judge Hogan Sullivan, to help out. And he was a handful. I went to 3 different courthouses to speak on this young Marine's behalf. 3 different courthouses, 2 in Worcester County, 1 in Middlesex County. And this went on for 3-4 years. Me taking this young Marine to Spectrum program in Westboro, to Jeremiah's Inn in Worcester, to Maverick in Eastport. I took him to every imaginable program, including VA programs. And the reason I'm bringing this lad up is because I got that dreaded call Saturday morning from his stepfather at 33 years old, EOD. So you can work as hard as you want. Doc knows this. There's going to be disappointments. Me and that young man would sit in my office for hours at a time. I would drive him to a program. I would drive him to detox. I would drive him here, drive him there. But, I finally talked to his mother this morning. I talked to his stepfather a couple of times over the weekend. But, I think me and Doc's program prevent, because he never went to, he never attended. I'm not saying we're lifesavers, but he never attended our programs in Natick. We started after the fact. I'm not saying we would have saved this young man, but probably if he was attached to a program like ours, he'd still be with us.
It must be
We
heartbreaking.
have an open-ended invitation to anybody that's in the program to contact us. They have our email, our phone numbers. Contact us at any time should something come up. I did want to say one other thing, that when Paul and I walked into MCI Norfolk some 25 years after we had been there before, nothing had changed, in case you were wondering.
Not a thing.
Yeah. So it's
Bill had a question in chat, which I was also wondering, was kind of what the optimal size of the groups is. I think you guys mentioned that it had grown from 1 group to 2 and maybe 3 now. And I just both kind of, what's the best size of the group? Does it matter whether it's a Zoom-based group or in person?
It doesn't.
What's the dynamics?
It doesn't matter, Zoom or in person. Me and Doc would like to go back to in person and Zoom at the same time, and we can do that. We can do that on the shores of Lake Atchison with the technical advances. We can do that. We can go down to Camp Arrowhead or the AMVETS or one of those places on Lake Atchison and do virtual and in person. And the size does matter. That's a huge good question. A huge thing with me and Doc. When we started these groups, the reason we went to 2 was me and Doc had a set number. We're not going to go over a set number. What was that number, Doc?
10.
10. And all of a sudden, our group got up to 12. And me and Doc said, we can't do this. It's not fair to the participants to have 12 people in the group. So we started a second group. And we try to keep the number, I would say, 8 and below. Does that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, it's not always possible, unfortunately, because we have people who are sent to us. They're required to come to our meetings by the court. So it's hard to say, nope, sorry, there's no room at the inn. So we try to do our best to work around that. COVID has taken its toll on the population in all of the recovery courts, all of the specialty courts. And that has sort of saved us to be able to control our own numbers. We're anticipating that will change and trying to figure out how we're going to handle that. But
and I gave you that that sad but true story about my young Marine. But the good story is most of the calls that me and Doc get from our graduates, the core graduates and so forth. Hey, I just had a baby, Paul. I want you to come to the shower. That's what the calls that me and Doc want. And we got one going to law school. We got 2 going to law school now. And one wants to stay on and be a facilitator like me and Doc. I'm a facilitator for facilitators, so I facilitate. I got 6 inmates at Norfolk State Prison to be facilitators. They took my course, my facilitator course, and I got them the license, if you want, to be facilitators. And this graduate of the court wants to do the same thing, right, Doc? And he's a second year law student. So you get these folks come through our program, and he'll be our third graduate in law school.
one of the interesting side things about that is we get invited to graduations or to baby showers on and on, and the question becomes, how do we introduce ourselves? Oh yeah, we met when he was in court, so we leave that up to the person who's invited us. But anyway, you always impress the invite.
Tell us more about your the facilitator program. It sounds like that's amazing. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing that. There's a question up at MetroWorks. So let's ask that one.
Thank you. Hi, it's Sally. Doc and Polly, share a little about women and women veterans and women that are working, that you're working with. What's the percentage and what are your insights there? And I'm just interested in how much do they participate in this?
Well, in my work, Sally, I've been doing national service work now for 35 years, and I would say my first 25 years of that work, very seldom would have a woman come to me for help or assistance or therapy, and in the last decade, those numbers have well skyrocketed, to say the least, and therefore, for all the same reasons that the male veterans are coming to me, Sally. When I talked about women earlier, the 2 women appointed recently by the governor's office to the Governor's Council of Sexual Assaults, Domestic Violence, and Military Sexual Trauma One's the head of the Women Veterans Network in Massachusetts, and the other is a former military policeman who investigated sexual assaults when she was in the Army as an MP. So these two have extensive, either one of them would be great speakers for your group. Both of them together, they both got the appointment together, and but they're both extraordinary women. Sal, you would love these two, Ro and Susan. They're terrific, and I love working with them. So.
And how about women clients, women, participants, women veterans?
Yeah, we have. Well, when Doc had mentioned the Zoom to Northampton, that was a very pregnant woman, and she was the court system up here, and she moved to Northampton for family to be closer family during her pregnancy, and I can't. And she had the baby. I think she had two babies, but she was one of the first ones to come on board with our program. And right now, how many women do we have, Doc?
Think we have 4 women.
We have 4
in our
women.
groups.
4 women out of 16, 18 participants, Sally, and in my VA work, I was appointed to this governor's committee because of my extensive work in military sexual traumas. That's why I got the appointment to the governor's council. I was unfortunately the go-to guy for that work, and still am. And saying unfortunately because it's unfortunately we need to do that. If that happens in the military, it makes me really ill to know that happens in the military. And I'll be honest with you, Sally, for my clients, for my service work, my amount of military sexual trauma victims, male and female, the males outnumber the females, just so people know that. People don't realize that. There's more military sexual trauma involving male veterans than there are female.
As victims.
Yeah.
As victims.
Wow. That's something.
That's for another
The
story.
numbers of women in the court is much lower than men. In our experience.
Yes.
Do you feel the numbers being lower, is that sort of spacing on how to frame the question, but there is a smaller percentage of women total in the service than men. I'm just trying to get at the idea of whether women may be underrepresented in feeling able to seek treatment, or is that
No.
Is that
no. Of course, the amount of women veterans come out of the military is like 35 to 65%. So it's really growing. There's no more obstacles for a woman veteran to come into the Veterans Treatment Corps than for a male veteran. As a matter of fact, if there was a way of recruiting those in trouble, and a lot of times we don't find out. I don't know if this would be politically correct, but I think the woman veterans are more proud than the male veterans of bringing these issues to the light. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to ask. I didn't phrase it well, but thank you.
Yeah, that's
My concern is, Paul, is you're both men, and do you have some open, not open invitations, but that channel or avenues so that when women come to you, they might feel the need to then really talk to other women?
No, Sally, it's I find just the opposite. people come to me and Daw for reasons, and I feel that the women veterans that come to me on my reputation, on my work, and there aren't women on in the field that do my work in the entirety, Sally. I'm fortunate that they are able to come to me. They are able to, whether it be military sexual trauma or another claim, they're able to come into my office, sit down, and close the door, Sally. You know
So I
what I'm
wanted
saying?
to circle back. You were mentioning, Paul, about facilitating others to do this work or maybe similar work. And I'm wondering both if you could talk a little bit about that, and also just the two of you are doing such great work. Do you have colleagues or kind of peers that also lead similar groups that you're able to share your or trade experiences and tips and techniques with?
We're doing that right now, Doug. I think me and Doc run probably the only court ordered program like this of this kind in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Am I right, Doc?
Absolutely. I think beyond the Commonwealth as well.
And beyond the Commonwealth. So,
Wow.
so me and Doc already in the plannings to make facilitators of graduates, make facilitators out of other people in the community that want to do it. Because I'd be glad to. I mean, it'd be a lot easier to make Doug and Sarah facilitators than 6 inmates in MCI Norfolk.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier that I'm doing some writing about, our formula, if you will, and the reason for that is you can get trained as a facilitator in smart recovery without the kind of background that Paul and I have. Any background you have, you can do that. So what we're looking at is, so what is so different about what we do versus a regular smart recovery group? And that's what we're trying to work on now, and trying to get away from our specific personalities, our specific training, our specific experiences, to try to figure out how, because I don't think we're that bad that we think we're the only ones that could do this kind of thing. But the question is, how do we formulate that so that others can come in with their experience, their personalities, and do similar things. It's the kind of thing where you just sort of follow this. We meet every Saturday. It's rare when we take a Saturday off. We believe that holiday weekends are a really, really difficult time for not only our veterans, but, recovery court people. So we have our meetings then. We make ourselves available to anybody who may need us. So it's tricky to figure out. We do have a tendency to say, well, this is our personality, this is our experience. We talk a lot about having worked in corrections, this and that. But there's more to it that we're trying to articulate, and as a way to offer this as an experience to other people.
Yeah, to Sally, to your point, communication is huge. I taught communication courses at the Sheriff's Department level, Department of Corrections, and communication is huge. I try to teach VSOs communication skills. That is huge. A good communicator is more effective, obviously, than someone that can't communicate. But me and Doc have that communication connection, actually, and we went to the prison, for example, we just communicate back and forth. I think Doc took my communication class back at the UC. I'm only kidding, you know what I'm saying? But that's a huge part of it. Anybody can do smart recovery by the numbers, you know what I'm saying? 1 through 22. Anybody can do that. I could teach anybody to be a facilitator of smart recovery. It's the next level of sitting in on a couple of Doc and Polly's groups and saying, wow, they're not doing it right by the numbers. They're incorporating some other stuff in here, and that's what Doc was talking about. You know, it's not just doing the smart recovery or the psychology part of it by the numbers. It's incorporated and communicating it to the folks who are trying to help.
So if we all went to an AA meeting together, and then at the end of it talked about, well, what did you think? Some of us would think, wow, it was really good. I learned a lot about it. Others would feel offended by it. Too religious, not my thing. Others would say, you know, I didn't like the speakers, because that's the way it works. And we were in a training with some national leaders of, veterans treatment courts and that kind of thing. And we were in a break-off meeting with one of the leaders who had mentioned that he had at one point been drinking too much. And he said he went to an AA meeting and he didn't like it. And I said to him, you went to the wrong meeting. And he was taken back. And then he thought about it and smiled and said, yeah, I mean, there are a gazillion different meetings. They all have different personalities. They're all based on the same 12 steps and 12 traditions, but they're all different, every one of them. So in a situation like that, if you don't go to more than one meeting, even if you like the meeting you go to, you're going to miss out on a lot. So that's what we're looking for here in our work. I would say that you'd be pretty hard pressed to come to our group and get through Paul and I and not learn something. Yet we understand that there is that component, just like in AA. People used to come to me and say, you know, I've gone to meetings and I've outgrown them. You know, I'm not drinking now. I'm doing, and I would say to them, you know, they're out there. And the reason I know they're out there, they being the meetings that would be helpful to you, is that I know people who are in them, who describe to me the group that they're in that sounds exactly the same thing that you're looking for. So we want to be able to communicate on that level to other facilitators. Frankly, a lot of the people that we meet are interested in doing the smart recovery by the numbers, but not more than that. So it has to do not only with experience, but commitment and interest, and there's just a lot of different variables. And we're trying to do this in a way that won't take us a million years to figure it all out. So on the one hand, on the other hand, we don't want to water it down either. You see that a lot of times with training, where we need to get to a common denominator here, and you get to that, and it's just not enough. You need that X factor, so to speak.
So substance abuse is obviously, you know, way more widespread than just the military community. Are there aspects of your program that kind of focus on extra challenges that the military community has that either make them susceptible to substance abuse? Not being military myself, I don't think I'm even forming the question the right way, but like what's the difference between the folks in your group all being military and others that aren't?
Let me try that, Doug. Okay, your son was airborne.
Right.
Two deployments. You and Sarah did nothing but worry while he was deployed. Right. I think back to my mother, you know, when almost fainting on the floor when I told her I was going to Vietnam. You know, but two things that two variables that lead veterans more often to substance abuse is the culture and the climate around the bases. Any base you go through in this country, in this world, drugs are rampant. Drugs are rampant. Alcoholism is encouraged. I shouldn't say alcoholism. Drinking is encouraged. So, and stress again. Stress leads to. It's not an excuse. I'll say it into my grave. It's not an excuse for substance abuse, but it causes substance abuse. It's a way that we deal with substance abuse. It's hiding the traumas and the triggers and the stresses that we may have from our military experiences. It's I'm running a brain thing here, Doc. Sometimes
I think one of the important things to understand about our groups is that you come to Veterans Treatment Court. You have to be a veteran, but you're not necessarily deployed. You're not necessarily in the service for a particular length of time. So we have that connection of being a veteran. Excuse me, but the rest is we get a lot of, for lack of a better term, street people who come in who have been maybe involved in drugs for most of their lives, and they end up, at one point they used to give you the option, you can go to jail or go to the service.
Right.
You go to the service for X amount of time, you're a veteran, you'll get veterans benefits, and one of those benefits is going to Veterans Treatment Court as opposed to jail. Now, there are requirements to get into the court. I mean, you don't just say, okay, I want to do this, and you get in, but still it's an opportunity that's made available to you. So we have a real cross section of people that come to us, different branches of the service, but also different experience, where they may or may not be deployed. So you can be in the same group, same smart recovery group, and have people who have not only been deployed, but have had several deployments. One of our mentors just came back from a deployment not too long ago. He's an attorney, and he's reinventing himself in terms of his practice. And a friend of mine who's an attorney and knows what I've been doing suggested he get in touch with me. He did, and he has become a mentor. And unfortunately for us, he's getting very busy in his practice. Fortunately for him, but unfortunately for us. But he's still doing what we've asked him to do. So we got quite the cross section. Plus, you can be in that group, and there is someone who is not a veteran but is on probation or in recovery court. And so each of our groups now has a mixture. We've had, at one point we were going to keep our veterans in one group and recovery court people in the other, and that just didn't work out. And I'm glad it didn't, because it in retrospect didn't make the kind of sense that we thought it might. But so they're just quite a few variables. And with at this point in our lives, Paul and I are comfortable with who we are and what we know, and so people can come in and throw whatever you want at us. And 20 years ago, I would have been nervous as could be. Actually, more than 20 years ago. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So, and that's one of the other variables. Bring whatever you want to the meeting. We're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot to bring the atmosphere down at the beginning of these meetings is a lot of times Doc will say to me, hey, Paul, he'll look at the faces in the crowd and he'll say, Doc, hey, Paul, why don't you circle the wagons this morning? Right? In other words, do the loop. Doug, sir, what's the high point this past week? Ricky, what's the low point of this past week? Elaine, both. What's the high point? What's the low point this past week? You know, and that's part of the CBT. You know, comparisons. I had a bad week. You know, or I had a good week, and you compare your bad and your good, and usually the good will outweigh the bad in the long run. I found.
Yeah.
I just told you I didn't have a great weekend. You know what I mean? But I'm here this morning because I think it's important that folks know that we're available. I had an email Saturday from a native resident telling me his son, a Marine Corps veteran, is in Billerica House of Correction right now as we speak. He's in the Framingham Native Courthouse facing additional charges. And I told this gentleman, I says, contact your nephew's attorney and tell your nephew's attorney to ask for veterans treatment for your nephew. The word gets around. That's what I want. If the word gets around with this group, you know, I think you served your purpose, Doug, and sir, and me and Doc have served our purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Martin. Martin knows everybody, so you know.
On that note, I want to thank the both of you for coming to speak to us. And yeah, I mean, you touch on an important part, Paulie, that you know, we're the recipients sitting here, Coffee with a Purpose, of so many, you know, interesting speakers that tell us of the work that they do in the community. And you know, it's an honor for us to hear all of this, but we also have the obligation to pass along news of that work to the people that we meet in our lives that might need services like the two of you are offering. So thank you both for everything that you're doing, and thank you for sticking with it. You know, you get the call of someone who unfortunately, you know, made the wrong decision. You know, God, you know, how you keep going after that.
But you know, Doug, Doc knows me pretty well. That gives me incentive to push harder.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, Carey knows a lot of people. So everybody in this program knows a lot of people. Carol, Bill, all you folks, Rick, Martin, Erica, you all know a lot of people, and you know, and by spreading the word, I'll get that email from the uncle telling me his nephew's in jail, and he's facing more charges this morning. So maybe I can help him. Right, Doc?
The other piece is that we have each other, and you know, our shared experiences, and when this kind of stuff happens. So for instance, we were doing the group on Saturday. Well, I don't remember which group it was, and the call came in. Paul had to take the call, but he was just doing the rounds, and so I just picked it up. And there have been times when I've had to leave early or drop out for a few minutes, and Paul can easily pick up what I was doing. A nice smooth transition either way. So that's pretty significant as well. Yeah. So
truly the Doc and Paulie show. You guys are a team. Yeah. Well, again,
thank you, Doug and Sarah, for having us on this morning.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you both for all you do. We really appreciate it. It's a really important service to have.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
So
thank you very much.
So Martin, if you want to turn the recording off, I think we're we're pretty much done.